Oh, we're back. We are back. It feels so good to be back. Jordan, how are you doing today?
I'm doing good. We had a couple of weeks off. You and your travels, me and my midterms. It was a busy couple weeks,
Yeah.
and just a big congratulations to Jonah, who got promoted at work. So
Yeah.
Jonah's killing it. He was in Dubai this week, gave us a nice track tour of Abu Dhabi. If you guys are following Instagram, if you are not, then you should be following the Instagram because Jonah is giving us great track tours when
Yeah.
he's traveling. So you guys do that. It's been a great couple weeks. You have lots to recap. 4 races, headlines galore. Jonah, let's get into it.
Yeah. Well, yeah, for those who don't know, at the time of recording, it's October 29th. I arrived in Montreal about 3 hours ago from Dubai and Abu Dhabi, where I did in fact walk the Yas Marina track. And you should definitely go on our Instagram at the JJF1 podcast to see a quick track view because it was awesome. It's really nice. Actually, they have 2 days a week where you could bike the track, men and women, and then on Tuesday nights it's women only that could bike and walk the track from 6 to 10 p.m. So cool things about what how circuits are used when there's no F1 race. But we're here to talk about the Italian Grand Prix, the Singapore Grand Prix, the Japanese Grand Prix, and finally the US Grand Prix. And we're recording this the day of the Mexican Grand Prix qualifying. So this is going to be crazy. All right, let's jump straight into it. Let's talk about Italy first. So, Jordan, I want your opinion on this race in general, because to be honest with you, this Italian Grand Prix sucked.
Yeah, there was a whole debate for those who remember. After the race, everybody's asking the golden question: should a race end behind the safety car? Because last year in 2021 at Abu Dhabi, there was a significant effort so that the race does not end behind the safety car. And boom, what do we get? We get controversy, controversy, controversy. But this time around, Daniel Ricciardo had a failure, I believe, and was on the side of the road. And instead of red flagging the session, they put out a safety car, and the safety car prolonged to the point where they had to end the race behind a safety car. However, Charles was catching Max, and it was going to be a very tight finish. So, Jonah, do you think that races should end behind a safety car? That's really the golden question when it comes to the Italian Grand Prix this year.
I mean, no, but the thing is that you can't really predict how fast marshals expect to retrieve a car, right? So maybe they put in the safety car under the assumption that the car was going to be recovered in time for 2 or 3 more laps of racing, but it just went longer than expected. So normally I would say no. And I think that F1 in general was also heading towards the direction of not of keeping a green flag for a few race laps, but it could be that the marshals kind of just ran into a problem or something like that, because otherwise you would think that the FIA would be better than that to be able to call a safety car or call a red flag depending on the situation of the race.
See, I have an interesting take, in comparison to yours. I think that there should be a rule, and they should input this rule, that if you have a VSC or an SC that you are going to call within the last 7 laps of the race, it should auto be a red flag.
Oh
Regardless
yeah.
of if it's a VSC and SC, I think you should red flag the session.
I don't think so.
I
I don't think
I
so,
think whether
buddy.
it's a 10-minute, 20-minute, 30-minute red flag, it does not matter. I don't think that races should end behind the safety car. I think that every team should have as equal of an opportunity to win, and there should not be any differences between how one race is treated towards the other. There should be a consistent rule that's always applied in every single circumstance, in every single race situation.
I think
That
that
is my
that's
take.
I think that that's a major stretch, though, to say, okay, there's 7 laps left. What if there was 8 laps left and someone crashed, for example, or like one over the rule?
I think that maybe we should say 10 laps left, but there should be
Yeah.
literally there should be a red line that says this amount of laps. No, if it's 11 laps, odds are with a safety car left, you get it out within 3 or 4 laps. That's
Okay.
normal. But let's say there's a buffer zone of X amount of laps. The FIA knows better than I do,
Yeah.
um, where they say, okay, one more safety car, one
Yeah.
less,
But
and on the
also,
nose, no safety car. Red
but
flag the
also you
session.
have you have races like Spa where the laps are so long that 7 laps is like a quarter of the race or a fifth of the race or something like that.
Yeah, obviously, I think it should be track specific. So maybe they say like 20% of the race left or 10% of the race left,
Yeah.
depending on how many laps there are. But I think there should be a uniform rule where they say X amount of laps left in the race or X amount of percentage of laps left in the race. I think they should um, red flag the session.
Mm. I think uh I'm not a big fan of that idea, but we will see. Um, moving on to probably the biggest story of the Italian Grand Prix. Alex Albon had appendicitis, which meant that Nick De Vries, who this season has appeared for Williams, Mercedes, and Aston Martin, and next year will be racing for AlphaTauri, which we're going to get into later. De Vries outqualified Latifi and scored a point. He got P9, or sorry, 2 points. He got P9 in the end of the race in a Williams on debut. And for a very long time before Latifi got his point, he was actually above Latifi in the driver's standings. Latifi was 21st out of 20. So what do you take of the Nick De Vries story, and how much do you think that had an effect on Helmut Marko coming up to him and stealing him from Mercedes?
I've been calling for Nick De Vries to have an F1 seat for the past 3 years. Every single time we tried to predict the driver lineup, or we tried to talk about who's coming up next in F1, I've said Nick De Vries needs to be in F1. This guy is overdue for a shot, and he got it. And he, in a Williams, Alex Albon took him 3 races to get points. He got one.
On
So I think
debut,
that
seriously,
on
points
debut,
on your F1
after
debut.
after having driven for Aston Martin in FP1, may I remind you,
That's
which
the
are
joke of
two
it. In the same weekend, he drove for Aston Martin.
exactly, so two completely different cars, and he killed it. I think that he was deserving of a seat in F1. What I find very interesting about the situation is that we're seeing, in this silly season compared to other silly seasons, a lot of drivers switching families.
Mm,
Before we were not even able to even think of an Alpine Academy driver going to a Ferrari-based team
yeah,
like Guan Yu Zhou. We were not even able to think of a Red Bull driver tied to a strict Red Bull contract go to a Williams who's a Mercedes-based team,
yeah,
not in the Red Bull family. But now it's all over the place. You have an Alpine Academy driver going to McLaren. You have a Mercedes Academy driver going to a Red Bull team. And the opposite, you have Alex Albon, a Red Bull driver who's at a Mercedes team.
yeah.
So it's crazy how we have um, such a vast and different, silly season among us right now, because it's nothing like we've ever seen before.
I am
So I think
absolutely
that
living. I am living for the drama.
yes, I think that AlphaTauri is actually one of the best seats that Nick De Vries could have landed, because it's one of the simpler car to drive, and also if he does well, Sergio Perez is not getting younger. He could be next up for the Red Bull seat.
No
And
way De Vries is going to end up in Red Bull.
I would not put it past
No
you 5
way.
years from now if you see
No
Nick De Vries in
way.
Red Bull.
You think De Vries is going to be in F1 alone, let alone AlphaTauri for 5 years?
Yeah, 3 to 5 years.
Hmm.
If Perez doesn't start winning some races consistently, I don't think that he's going to keep that seat,
Well,
because
look,
for them the minimum for their second driver is to get podiums in and out, and Perez has proven that he can do that. Now the next step is to start winning some races and to really compete with Max on that end, because Mercedes have had their high, like their most amount of popularity when Rosberg and Hamilton were competing against each other.
Yeah.
Red Bull want the same amount of of clogging of the market share like Mercedes
Mhm.
had back then.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is that I'm very, very satisfied with the way that Sergio Perez has driven this season so far. Um, and we're going to talk about what I think is the best drive of his career in a few minutes. But I don't think that Red Bull having two potential championship caliber drivers is good for them, because we've saw what happened in 2016 with Hamilton and Rosberg, where they just came together on multiple occasions, and in the end, it was just ruining the team and team morale. And I don't think that Red Bull, as an organization, are ready to set themselves up for something like that.
Especially with the cost cap that has no repercussions coming into
Yeah.
place.
So I don't know. I
I,
think that if Sergio Perez stays to the Mark Webber caliber driver, then Red Bull will be very happy.
I just don't think Perez is getting any younger. He's the type of guy that is married with, two kids. He doesn't seem like he's going to be an F1 for much longer. He's had a very long career. So I see the second coming. I don't think it's Yuki Tsunoda. I think it's going to be a De Vries type
Let's
of
Hey,
driver.
Jordan, let's not forget that in another sport, Giselle Bundchen left Tom Brady because of his overlying pressure to continue playing football.
Yeah, but this is different.
This is different. It definitely is different. But speaking of Sergio Perez, let's move forward to the Singapore Grand Prix, because I was so happy. First off, I loved the Singapore Grand Prix. I am so happy that the Singapore Grand Prix came back um after 2 years, because if you remember in one of our first episodes where we talked about our favorite circuits, it was what I named it as one of my favorite circuits, and it's so much fun to watch. Even on a 3 hour timer, or no, sorry, it was a 2 hour timer because there was no red flags. But anyways, on a 2 hour timer, Sergio Perez defended absolutely everything and all challenges and restarts and everything to perfection. And I think that Sergio Perez, this has to be 100% the best drive of his career.
I couldn't agree more. I think the F1 community is unanimous when it comes to this. Um, yeah, it's enough said. You described it perfectly. He had a fantastic race. He fended off everyone, and he had an amazing start too. We keep forgetting he qualified P2 and had an amazing start versus
And took the
Leclerc.
lead into turn one. Exactly.
Yeah, and he had an amazing start, amazing first lap, and didn't let go since.
Yeah.
And we also, don't give enough credit to Red Bull, the team. They had an amazing strategy they executed with him. The pit stops were on point. Everything fell into place at the right time, and it was one of the best drives of his life.
Yeah, I mean, I think it also helped that Max Verstappen had to abort his lap in Q3 because there wasn't enough fuel in the car. But I think regardless of that, we've had other situations, most notably anything that happens throughout the next few races, where Max could just start from wherever and win anyways. I mean, what, Max Verstappen won a race or this year from 14th or something like that. So
Yeah, it's Spa.
yeah, it's Spa. So you know what? I think the fact that Max didn't end up catching up to Perez, regardless of the situation, shows just how well he drove that race. On
Well,
top of that, because you had two Ferraris behind. It wasn't a Mercedes, it wasn't Max, it was two Ferraris who were on the charge, and it was just an absolute masterclass in the wet by Sergio Perez.
and he's a great wet weather driver and a great night race driver also.
I
You know,
know. What's this?
it,
He won in Insecure at night, and then he won in Monaco, and now he's won in Singapore.
well,
And
Monaco
then
is
he
during the
won in
day, but
Baku. So
yeah,
four races.
he's great at the sorry, should say this. He's great at the street circuits. He
The
loves the
street
streets.
circuits. Well, yeah, exactly. He's only one on street circuits, right? No,
And Sakir.
Sakir is not a street circuit. Don't listen to
Yeah.
me. But otherwise, Baku, Monaco, Singapore, come on. Like, if I think those are also some of the toughest races to win at, right? Because of the
Which is
street
interesting that
circuit
he's
nature.
it's interesting that he wins under these circumstances that are so tough. You know, when you think about Sakira's first win, he was P20 at the end of the race, at the end of the first lap. Sorry. You know, there was the whole crash with Verstappen and Leclerc. They crashed out, and he had to maneuver on everyone and was in P20. And you know, overtake after overtake, made it to P1 at one point. You know,
Yeah.
granted, there was the George Russell fiasco with the tires, and Bottas wasn't performing so well. But all to say that, you know, he came back from P20, which is a very tough circumstance. And
Yeah.
then in these street circuit races, where you know you lose more weight, it's Singapore is incredibly hot. It's one of the toughest races of the year, and he wins in those circumstances also. So hats off to him. I'd love to see him to win some more races. And I think that he is overdue for a season where he wins multiple races.
I mean, already this year he's up to 2, so that's more than any other previous season in total.
Yeah.
But you know, tomorrow's the Mexican Grand Prix. If Perez wins, all of Mexico is going to jump like crazy.
The perfect ending to this season would be that Perez wins in Mexico, Hamilton wins in Brazil, and Vettel wins in Abu Dhabi. That'd be the perfect end to this season.
No way Vettel's going to win in Abu Dhabi.
No, I know, but I'm saying it'd be the perfect end.
Then this is coming from me, who said that both Vettel and Lance were going to win races this year. So, yeah. You know,
well, look, but they have been looking good at the U.S. Grand Prix. They were running, I think, 5th and 6th at one point, or 4th and 5th. It was.
Don't talk to me about the U.S. Grand Prix. Don't talk to me about the U.S. Grand Prix.
Well, we're not there yet. Let's move on to Japan, and then we'll get to the US Grand Prix.
But it was just such. We'll get onto that later. But you know, Perez was a great wet weather driver. Another person who we know who was another great wet weather driver is Lance Stroll, who finished P6. How do you feel about that?
I've given up on Lance Stroll.
Okay, never mind then.
I have. I really have. It's really hard to cheer for him when he does really stupid maneuvers at the Circuit of the Americas.
Yeah, well,
and at Albert Park.
Yeah, we're gonna get into that later. But another last thing about Singapore is another thing that I realized is, as much as people who know how to drive in the wet do really well, people who don't know how to drive in the wet do absolutely horribly. Like we had Joe, Latifi, Alonso, Albon, Ocon, and Tsunoda all DNF just because, I don't know, like they managed to lose traction and just bin it in barriers. How? Seriously.
I don't know. Albon also, he like hit a patch of water and then boom.
Same thing with Tsunoda. It was major sad.
Yeah.
But yeah, let's move over to Japan now. And it's story time for me because the night of the Japanese Grand Prix, it started at 1:00 in the morning Montreal time. I had a hockey tournament the entire day that finished at 12:45 in the morning. So I was watching. I watched lap 1 before I drove home. Because it was in Joliette, which for those who don't know is about 45 minutes away from Montreal. So yeah, I watched lap 1 and then I was like, oh, they're gonna, like, they red flagged everything. I'll just, you know, listen to see if anything changes on my way home, and maybe by the time I get back they'll restart again. Nah, it was like 3:00 in the morning and there was still nothing. So finally, whatever it was, a 2.5-hour red flag, leading to 40 minutes of the craziest racing that I've seen in a very long time. Jordan, what do you take of the quick sprint format that ended up giving full points on top of it?
I actually really think that, I was a very big hater of the sprint before. Um, but I really like the sprint. I think it adds a lot of fun to the weekend. I think that the sprint, it's going to come to
Yeah.
6 races next year. I really think that's a great idea. Um, I think it allows for more competitiveness in
Mhm.
a weekend. I think it allows for more, um, not randomness, but a chance for the grid to shake up a
Yeah.
little bit. And I
But
think that's a
I
lot of
think
fun.
that just the fact that the race ended up being a sprint makes it that much more interesting on top of it.
Yeah, because, first of all, we need to address the elephant in the room. Before the race even happened, there was the, do you think the race should have started? And what is your thoughts on the recovery vehicle being on the track? Because I have very interesting thoughts on that.
Uh, I don't know. I feel like F1 is always pressured to start on time regardless of the current conditions unless it's really really bad. We could go back to the Monaco Grand Prix of this year, we could go back to Belgium 2021. um Regardless of the weather, they managed to start at whatever it was 2 p.m. um and they red flagged everything after that. So I think it's outside pressure that gets F1 to start those races like exactly on time, regardless of what it's looking like on the track.
Well, it's actually interesting you say that because a lot of people don't notice this, but every single time we start a race, there's a big Rolex clock that they zoom in on, and it does the tuk tuk until it hits the time that it's supposed to start the race.
Yeah.
So the whole debate is how much money is Rolex paying
Oh,
for
come
them to
on. I
start the
don't
race
think
on
that it's
time?
because of Rolex on their own, man. Like,
I'm just saying, I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but
no,
I'm
even when stuff is delayed, like for example, when they say like, oh, like you know how Q2 sometimes or Q3, like different qualifying sessions are pushed back for a few minutes because of rain. Like
yeah.
even when it hits like whatever it is, three like whatever 2:30 or whatever, it'll still click and then the lights will go off.
Yeah, no, I'm just joking around, but I'm just saying that it's
Speaking of
interesting
which,
that you
I
mentioned
saw
it.
those clocks everywhere when I was in the UAE. Absolutely everywhere. The Rolex
I'm
clocks,
sure.
like as if as if we were on an F1 circuit, absolutely everywhere.
I'm sure. But yeah, so I think that for the whole Pierre Gasly situation, I'm glad that they addressed it in the following race. That's number one, because it's very dangerous to first of all not be able to see anything,
Yeah.
and also have a recovery vehicle on the track, and them not knowing anything about that, not even them being able to see a recovery vehicle.
Yeah.
And had one little thing gone wrong in that little instance, Pierre Gasly could have hit the recovery vehicle. And
Yeah.
we, like you said, doesn't want to repeat of Jules Bianchi's incident back in the day.
I think, I mean, let's be real. The reason why this started, regardless of the recovery vehicle situation, was Carlos Sainz, because in the last two races, he's raced a grand total of one lap. How do you
Yeah,
think his season's been going, Jordan?
yeah. I mean, it seems like ever since the British Grand Prix, it's on a little downhill. It's
Yeah.
been, he had the peak moment. He's not doing so good. I think it just encompasses how Ferrari's season is going in general.
Yeah,
Um,
definitely.
I think just Charles may have had a little bit more luck. He has more experience with the team, so maybe that's why he's doing a little bit better. But at the same time, I think that just goes to show you how Ferrari is doing, how what their state of the team is, just
Yeah,
based off of Carlos Sainz.
definitely.
The team
Um,
is in a free fall.
oh, 100%. And if you want to talk about major free fall moments, we could talk about the last turn of the race where Sergio Perez and Charles Leclerc went at it. Leclerc locked up or slid or something like that, cut the corner, got a 5-second penalty, and which meant that officially after the race, he got 5-second penalty, which allowed Max to mathematically win the 2022 World Drivers' Championship. So before we talk about the fact that Max won the championship, what do you think of that entire situation? Because I think that it was fair in terms of like the 5 second penalty made sense for me, but at the same time, it might have been overkill.
My whole take is that I don't like when rules are not applied consistently. So, this 5 second penalty is based off leaving the track and gaining an advantage, which is very fair when it comes to having to give back a position, or establish a time penalty. I agree with that principle, but I don't like when it's not applied consistently. If you think back again to Abu Dhabi 2021 on the first lap, when Lewis went off the track, gained the advantage, and didn't have to do anything about it, why is that being applied now and not then when they're both clearly the same incidences, a similar sort of chicane? I think that, if you're going to be applying a rule, apply it uniformly.
Yeah.
Um, and I agree with the 5 seconds. I think there's no problem with the 5 seconds. It takes, a little bit less than 5 seconds to like give back a position.
Yeah.
But I think that I have no problem with the 5 seconds.
Yeah. Okay. I mean,
He did leave the track to get an
yeah.
advantage. So in theory, if there had been more laps, he would have had to give the position back anyway.
Yeah.
So however you interpret it, you apply the rule to show that Perez should be ahead because clearly, it was the end of the race, last lap. If he were to have another lap, Perez would have been ahead anyway.
I think that's just Ferrari doing Ferrari things at the same time. But anyways, I think my current stance is that it's 50-50. Just because I feel like there would be some sort of leeway because of the awful temperatures, but at the same time, not awful temperatures and awful conditions, but also you're one of the 20th best drivers in the world. You should be able to handle your car, you know?
Yeah, very fair argument.
But yeah, with that 5 second penalty, Max Verstappen becomes a 2-time consecutive world champion. I'm it's like he's too good. This guy is actually too good. We thought that Ferrari was going to cruise, after the first 3 races, and Max Verstappen said, "Hold my Heineken," and managed to win absolutely everything after that. So, I think this is just proof that when you have pissed off Max, Max wins.
I am most impressed that this season was maybe the most dominant season in F1 history.
We just
I
came
am
off a very dominant era.
I am thinking in terms of an individual driver, he equaled the record of Sebastian Vettel and Michael Schumacher about winning the most amount of races. And
This was at
you
the
said
US
it
Grand Prix, right?
exactly, and you
Yeah.
said it best. He can start from literally anywhere and win a race. We haven't seen a Ferrari win since Austria. We
Yeah.
haven't seen another team win since Austria. And how long ago was that? I think that was like round 11
I
or
think that
round,
was in the summer. Yeah.
yeah, I think it was round 11 or round 12. We're 3 races left in the season of a 22 race calendar year.
22 races. I'm trying to look up when Austria was. That was the last time. That was when Leclerc won on top of it.
That was the last time another team won. And I'm also saying that because we're not in a season where a team besides the top 2 have won a race.
Yeah. By the way,
last year we had
Austria was like early July.
yes, so it's been like a good 3 or 4 months. But I'll
Unreal.
just say last year we had Alpine and McLaren each winning a race. Then we had AlphaTauri winning a race, and so did Racing Point. They won a race at one point. So we've had seasons where it's been, a Mercedes dominant season, but it wasn't entirely
There's been
Mercedes.
some outliers, yeah.
Exactly. I feel like this season has been entirely Red Bull. And you go into the race, and it's a 99% chance that Max is winning.
Yeah.
I am very comfortable putting my money tomorrow that a Red Bull team will win the race. And
Qualifying hasn't even happened yet.
And qualifying hasn't even happened yet. Yeah, I could tell you a Red Bull team will probably win Brazil. and nothing's happened yet.
Yeah, that's fair.
So I'll have to say that it's been the most dominant season, in my opinion, in F1 history, because he's has the most amount of wins, probably will have the most amount of wins. And
I
he started
yeah.
he's had started from P14, P10, you name it, he wins.
I love how you're talking about how regardless of the situation, Max wins, because if we move to Austin, which was last week, Max had a slow pit stop. He was absolutely raging, and he still managed to win. Sorry. So,
Yeah.
what do you
He
take
he
of that?
he after the piss up, he was like, this is beautiful,
Yeah,
beautiful.
it's
I can't do an
absolutely
imitation of him, but sure.
beautiful.
Beautiful. Yeah, this is nice. Yeah, he was really upset and he won. Not only did he win, but I think it was like a 5 or 6 second gap between him and Lewis. He cut it and
Yeah.
won.
So let's talk about Lewis then after that. What were you thinking when Lewis was leading? First off,
I
Vettel
was
was
thinking,
leading.
yes, first Vettel was leading, and what I was thinking was, don't change tires. You don't need to change tires. Just go. No
And
reason. Just
then Aston Martin was like, I have a great idea. Like the 2 second pit stop. How about we don't do that?
yeah. They just said, you know what? We're gonna pretend you're Lance Stroll and give you the same type of luck.
Ugh.
And yeah, but he also still managed to finish P8 after Alonso's penalty was reinstated or whatever it was.
I was gonna talk about the penalty after, but go ahead.
Yeah, I think that he should have stayed out as much as he could and maybe like crawled his way to a podium place, or a P4 or P5 would have been fun. He didn't need to change tires. I think he already
Yeah.
had the two compounds.
I mean, P7 was not bad for Vettel. No, P7? P8?
No, P8. He was P8, which
Yeah,
is pretty
P8.
good.
Yeah, but he could have had a podium.
That's the
Lance
thing. So
also could have had a podium.
yeah, so what I was thinking was stay out, don't do anything, just drive. And then Lewis passed him, they brought him at the pit, and I was like, that's over.
Lance was literally in P3, and then Seb was leading, and they come home with 3 points.
That's Aston Martin's season, my friend. That's Aston Martin's season in a nutshell.
It's like, it's so yeah,
They were looking good. Honestly, they were looking good for the first time in a while.
But the thing is that they have some decent upward momentum. That's a thing. Is that the last few races they haven't done too badly.
Yeah, let's hope it continues this weekend. I'm hoping that maybe a podium comes up in the next 3 races, but you have to be cautiously optimistic with this team.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, just the slow pit stop from Vettel. I mean, look, and then Lance doing Lance things and the Alonso maneuver crash thing.
Dude did a wheelie.
Just unreal. Also, that entire situation of the penalty being instated and then removed and then everything,
yeah, so
is a complete failure on the FIA's
he was
part.
never shown
an absolute joke.
Alonso throughout the race for his mirror was never shown any sort of flag, was
No
never
one told him
to retire
anything.
the car from the FIA. It makes absolutely no sense. You can't presume that your car is illegal until someone tells you.
Yeah.
So to me,
let's be clear here. The only reason why Alonso's penalty was removed was because they figured out that Haas protested too late to be able to apply the penalty.
Yeah, it makes no sense to me.
So that entire situation is just an entire failure on the FIA's part to
the FIA
has
become a joke
to mess up the rules
recently.
that badly. You're supposed to be the governing body of motorsport. You literally are the rules. How do you mess it up that badly?
Yeah, to me it makes no sense. I don't understand why I got the penalty to begin with. We've seen things hang off cars that have never been spoken about by the FIA that were passed. We've had cars with no barge boards run. We've had cars with I don't understand why that
Max
was deemed
Verstappen
unsafe.
had half a car. last
in
year
Hungary. Yeah.
in Hungary.
So I don't know why did they put that penalty, in my opinion. But
Well, they at least they removed it, but the reason why they removed it is because Haas's penalty was Haas's what's his
protest
Haas,
of the
Haas's
of him
protest
Q7,
was
yeah.
late. Not
Right.
because they realized that they messed up, only because Haas's protest was late. And that is the absolute failure of the FIA on their end.
Completely agree.
It's
Let's
it's disappointing. It's absolutely disappointing.
now that we've spoken and we've mentioned Haas, let's move on to the good stuff. Jonah,
Yeah.
who do you think is going to be in that Haas seat next year?
Mick Schumacher. Please.
Hot take.
Is it a hot take anymore? Like, I don't know. I don't know, but I really want Schumacher to stay in F1. So I think he should stay in that seat.
Yeah, I think that he deserves a seat in F1. If you were talking to me 2 weeks ago, I'd say I'd like Ricardo to get that seat. But
I'm done with
I think that
Ricardo. I'm
I
done
think
with
that now
Ricardo.
it's a little too late. But I agree with you. I think it's gonna be Mick Schumacher as well. And they're gonna give
Yeah.
him a 1-year contract. And last year it's gonna be the final straw. If he does not either equal or beat Magnussen, he will not have a seat.
Yeah, that's fair.
And Haas loves Kevin Magnussen way too much to let him go ever. Unless
I
there's like a
don't
money
under,
situation
like
on the line, I don't think they'll let him go.
there are better drivers than Kevin Magnussen out there. Yeah,
I mean,
that's
I
my
agree with
stance. That's
you,
my stance on
but I
Kevin Magnussen. There are
but
better drivers out there.
I think that Haas really likes Kevin Magnussen.
I don't get it. I guess the Danish money brings it in.
Maybe.
But yeah, we have some major movements that we need to talk about. Number one, Pierre Gasly and Esteban Ocon are going to be teammates after like they hate each other or something like that a few years ago. So what do you think is going on at Alpine? And I think that this adds to the absolute mess that is going on at Alpine. And I think that this is going to be horrible for Pierre Gasly's career.
I really was happy to see Pierre Gasly leave the Red Bull family. And that's
Yes,
what I'm going to say.
but he went to Alpine, and Alpine is an absolute shambles.
I think that there was nowhere else he could have gone.
That's true.
And I think that he was really in a place that he was stuck. And there was no place he could have gone because the other
He
alternative
had
is
the
to go to maybe
AlphaTauri contract.
he has, but there's no future for him at AlphaTauri. They're not going to keep renewing him to 1-year deals. It makes no sense for him. He needs to go somewhere where he can win and he can be fighting at the top. AlphaTauri is not a team that's going to fight at the top. I think what Red Bull wants to do is they want to say, AlphaTauri, you had your shining moments back in 2020 when you at one point won as many races as us. After the Italian Grand Prix, they had exactly the same amount of wins on the season. I think Red Bull said, know your role, and they pushed them back a little bit and said, you are not a sister team, you are our the junior team, as they like to say. And they're pushing him back. And Pierre Gasly, for his career, I think is not a good plan to be in a junior team for his entire career. I think you should have at least a shot at a team that runs in the points consistently.
I agree with you 100% that he deserves that shot. And to be fair, he had that shot in 2019 and he didn't live up to it. But I think just the situation that he's going into with Alpine and the controversy that's surrounding the seat that he's currently occupying, just they're doing well on track, Alpine, but otherwise they're a complete mess. And I don't know if that's going to have an effect on their track result.
100%. And you could tell that there's definitely a lot of communication issues that happen at Alpine because, first of all, they didn't even know that Alonso was leaving until he posted on social media. That's number one. And number two, within the past 2 years, there has been Guan Yu Zhou and Oscar Piastri, who are both Alpine Academy drivers who have left the Alpine team. I would not be surprised if we see in the next 2 years, Jack Doohan doing really well and leaving the Alpine team as well. I'm not saying that he will do well and get seen Formula One. I'm saying that if he does get that opportunity, I don't think it'll be at Alpine. Yeah, yes. But anyways, all to say that there's clearly some communication issues at Alpine. But I think that not being under Helmut Marko's wing can do more positive than negative for Pierre Gasly.
100%. 100%. Speaking of which, also Aston Martin has a driver academy now, and Felipe Drogovic is the first member of it. That's pretty cool. And he just won F2. That's the thought process of I went from F2. You talked about Jack Doohan and Theo Bouchard and everything. But yeah, that's a nice future. And
I mean,
when Lance or Alonso inevitably leave.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's no reason for Aston Martin to have an academy. I think it's a waste of money, but that's my opinion.
Fair enough.
Straight up, it's my opinion.
Fair enough.
It's very much a waste of money because they just keep hiring veterans and their son. So, as you know, wouldn't be surprised if in 2 years,
there's going to be life past Lance. We just don't know when that is.
You would like to think so, but how long does Lance have left in F1, even considering the fact that his father is the owner of the team? Are we saying 10 more years? Are we saying 15? Alonso is, deep into his 40s.
I'm saying Lance has like 2 or 3. 40s? No, Lance is not racing until his 40s. I think he has like 2 or 3.
Yes, I agree. You have to look at life past Lance. I just don't see that happening in the near future.
Yeah, 2 or 3 exactly.
It's a different situation where your father is the owner of a big coffee/food company, and they sponsor the team a lot, and your father owning the team.
Correct. Yeah, definitely. Also, we talked a little bit about De Vries at AlphaTauri. I don't know if there's anything else that you want to add on that, but I'm just super, super happy for him. And I'm very curious to see how he's going to pair up with Yuki Tsunoda, because originally I thought that if anyone was going to leave AlphaTauri, it was going to be Yuki, but no, it's Pierre, and Nick is taking his seat.
Yeah, I'm very happy Nick De Vries at AlphaTauri. I think it's a great move for him. Like I said before, he deserves to be in F1. It's been a while. And I think that if he does perform well, he can take Sergio Perez's seat.
Fantastic. Another news in the Red Bull family is Dietrich Mateschitz passed away, who's the founder of Red Bull. And as much as he is the founder of a energy drink company, he also showed that with enough branding and with enough financial effort and with enough push, you could turn a bull and a slogan into anything. And a lot of people consider Mateschitz to be a big icon in Formula One. So I don't know if you have anything else to say on that also.
Yeah, I mean, you see Red Bull, the branding everywhere. They have a MLS soccer team, they have a hockey team in Germany, they have, an F1, F2, ski teams, you name it, they have it.
Anything extreme, Red Bull's name is on it.
Exactly. So it just goes to show you that, his company is, what is the pinnacle for marketing, across the globe. A lot of business schools study what Red Bull, I have at HOC studied Red Bull strategy in terms of marketing. In my international business class, I think we took the same class and maybe studied.
Yeah, we took the same class, but you did it in English. No, I did it in English and you did it in French.
I did it in French. And we read about Red Bull and their marketing strategies, and it's the pinnacle for marketing. I think that it shows that you could, like you said, turn a fizzy drink into a sports team, and it's very interesting. I have a lot of respect for Sebastian Vettel. Clearly was a mentor for him, and he is sporting the Red Bull logos on his Aston Martin car this weekend,
which is great. Which is a great initiative. Yeah.
Absolutely.
I think just if we go back into the motorsport part of it, it shows. I think well, Red Bull is an independent team, and we forget that, right? They're not tied to any major car manufacturer. And I think that also shows the willingness of the Red Bull team to turn nothing into something. And that something ended up being what? Four straight world championships for drivers and constructors, and now one driver and then another driver and constructor in the span of a decade. So I think that that's, or whatever, 12 years. So it's just impressive to see what nothing became something in that case.
100%. And it's
Yeah,
just funny to think because, before Red Bull was Red Bull, they were a Jaguar team. But I don't think the Jaguar car manufacturer could have gotten as far as Red Bull did.
no, definitely not at all. Not without the investment that Red Bull put in. Otherwise, let's move over to Williams. Gotifi is gone.
As a proud Canadian, I will say it's about time.
Yeah, it is. It is about time.
I remember seeing him at the Williams pop-up shop in Montreal. And I don't know if I told the JJF1 community this story, but I will say it again. I saw him and I said, Nicholas, big F1 fan, big Williams fan, nice to meet you. And he's like, nice to meet you too. Asked me my name. My name is Jordan. I said, good luck this weekend. And I told him, keep your head high. And I hope he's doing that right now.
Yeah, I hope so too, because it's been tumultuous. And as of this weekend, Jos Capito semi-confirmed or mostly confirmed that, assuming that Logan Sargent has his super license points, he will be driving for Williams next year. And I called it as well. I'm very happy for Logan Sargent because
you
well
did
done.
Call it. There is a little caveat though. Because he DNF'd in FP1 in Mexico, he didn't get the super license points for that session because he didn't drive 100 kilometers in an F1 car. So they have to add another FP1 session somewhere because he's already scheduled for Abu Dhabi. They have to fit him in somewhere.
Oh my God, we're gonna send Logan to Brazil.
So stay tuned on Logan Sargent. It's still a TBD.
Yeah, still a major TBD, but either way, like, I think it's time for another American in F1, and I'm very happy that it's Logan Sargent.
Yes, he's deserving of a seat, 100%. But speaking of F1 and the Americas, we have the Mexican Grand Prix this weekend. Jonah, what are we thinking about the Mexican Grand Prix?
Mexican Grand Prix. Look, Sergio Perez is winning. I don't care what anyone else says. Sergio Perez is winning.
I'll say that I will put my money on Red Bull winning, but if I were to do a bold prediction, I think that George Russell will get P3 or above.
That's a very solid prediction. We have one more thing to talk about before we head out, and
I completely forgot. Yes,
that is one more thing, and that is Audi is buying Sauber. Another thing that I have called.
I thought you were talking about something else. Okay, we have another thing to talk about.
And the calendar. We have the calendar and Audi buying Sauber.
We have then another thing to talk about.
And Porsche falling through with Red Bull.
No, we have another thing to talk about. We have
what am I missing?
Cost cap breaches.
Oh yes, and the cost cap breaches. Well,
so let's do some Spitfire quick.
Okay, Spitfiring. Okay? Audi buying Sauber. I called it, and I think that it's exactly the perfect way to enter into F1. The everything's already there. The system is already there. The factory's already there. The resources are already there. Boom. Here's a full-fledged F1 team with the Audi power unit. Not complaining.
I like seeing more car manufacturers in F1. I am just very confused as to how Ferrari is going to groom their drivers. That's my hot take.
Alfa Romeo. Or Andretti. Alfa Romeo or a new Andretti team.
We'll see.
We'll see. Now, Porsche deal falls through with Red Bull. I'm very curious to see what they have next.
I'm not surprised given the Audi announcement. As we know, Porsche and people say Porsche, I say Porsche. Porsche is in the Volkswagen group owned by the same owners as Audi. They cannot have two teams, conflict of interest, and they chose to enter Formula One through the Audi buying Sauber route.
We will see. Next, 2023 calendar. We have 24 races, the longest one ever. I think that that's going to be grueling for all of us. China and Qatar are back, and I'm equally disappointed about both of them. And there's no more French Grand Prix. What do you think?
Happy there's no more French Grand Prix. I really like the Losail International Circuit. I'm hoping it's going to be there.
It is at Losail, by the way. It will be at Losail.
I'm excited for that. Le Castellet was a not a good Grand Prix.
Yeah.
And excited for Vegas. Vegas is cool. I walked the strip this summer, loved it. I think it's gonna be awesome.
Yeah. I'm very disappointed that China is back on the calendar because I absolutely hate that circuit. And if you've listened to this podcast, you know how much I hate this circuit.
Yes. It's not a political show, but China should not be on the calendar for the same reasons as Russia.
Look, politics aside, the circuit's bad.
Yes, exactly.
There we go. Next, we have the cost cap penalties. Red Bull was fined $7 million for a $1.2 million breach, million pound or breach, or is it $1 million breach? Anyways, in the cost cap. However, if a tax rebate had been correctly applied, it would have only been somewhere around $400,000. What do you think of that fine? Because to be honest, you know, in the grand scheme of things, $145 million. Sorry, yeah, $145 million and being over by some, if the tax rebate was applied $400,000 or if not $1.8 million, you're in the margin of less than 1% in your accounting. So like, I think that's pretty reasonable. And the same thing for Aston Martin as well.
Yeah, I completely disagree. I am not a fan of the penalties that they gave.
Exactly. I don't think that it's fair, but the thing is that it's less than 1% in your accounting. Like no one's perfect, and it's just so complicated to be
but
this much over.
To me, that's like saying, oh, Formula One driver made a mistake. No one's perfect. So I think that we need to take into account the fact that these teams have a lot of financial resources, and they hire the best accountants and lawyers that there are in the game. So when you do that, you spend an arm and a leg. That way this does not happen. That way you don't pay a fine, and that way you don't have less wind tunnel time. So I think that it's on the team's fault. And I think that, like I said, for the safety car at the beginning of the episode, if the cost cap is not going to be applied consistently, there should be no cost cap at all.
Yeah.
And my big disagreement with the cost cap is not the fact that it's not really being applied, is that if you look at the rules, they say, oh, if you're a procedural and major or minor breach, you have 5 different possibilities as to what your penalty can be. And it's up to the FIA to decide what the penalty is, which I think is terrible. I think there should only be one penalty.
Sense. That makes absolutely no sense.
There should be one penalty. You go back this way, regardless of your accounting or lawyering that you had done, it's this penalty, and that's all it is. And they, because it's Red Bull, had to say, oh, if it's a deduction championship points, Lewis gets the championship, and they had to wrestle with fixing that. I think there should just be one strict rule applied, and that's that. And no FIA has to decide anything. They decide the rule at the beginning, and that's what it is.
Yeah,
I'm very against there being rules that are not applied consistently. And I think this is another mishap by the FIA in doing so.
The FIA has made no sense recently.
No, it's really disappointing for the fans, I will say.
Yeah, it's disappointing for the people who are watching because they're trying to understand, for example, in what situation a certain penalty is going to be applied, and now we don't even know anymore. It's literally Stanley Cup playoff hockey refereeing.
Literally.
It's a joke.
Jonah,
Yeah.
this was fantastic. I miss doing this podcast. We need to do this again in a couple days' time to go over the Mexican Grand Prix, or I should say the Mexico City Grand Prix.
The Mexico City Grand Prix.
Yes. And yes.
That's it. We did it. Thanks everyone for listening. If you'd like to follow us for the rest of the season and beyond, feel free to like our Facebook page, follow us on Instagram at the JJF1 podcast, and we will see you for the next episode. See ya.
Peace.